Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Welcome to the CILT Southern section in our presentation. Thanks especially to making time in everyone's busy workday. Thank you very much to our 4 speakers for giving up their time without hesitation. It's great to see the support shown to the CILT. In Canterbury, in particular, today's a very special date. So today is the anniversary, 11 years today from Christchurch earthquake. So please just take a moment throughout your day to contemplate the date. 11 years ago today, the loss of 185 lives. So the forum today, so our hope is that this update will provide a bit of confidence to our members that how you and your business are reacting to Omicron, that you're doing the right things, to provide a bit of support there relative to what others are doing in the industry. And you may pick up a few things to take away and use in your business as well. What we've asked our speakers today to cover off in brief is to provide an overview of their company's response to the current COVID situation, how they're managing the workforce pressures that we're probably all faced with, any expected impacts and volumes, whether it be container volumes or workflows through grocery channels, and their view on what the wider challenges are in the supply chain. So I'll just go through a little bit of the etiquette for today's forum. So everyone's muted except our 4 presenters. If anyone has any questions, if they can, please send those via a message through Teams to myself, and I will ask those after our speakers have talked. I'll introduce the speakers now. So first up is David Cooper, Warehousing and Logistics Manager from CILT, based down in Dunsandel. Followed by Bronwyn Woodham, who's the Health and Safety and Compliance Manager for Sorted Logistics. Simon Munt, General Manager for Container Operations for Littleton Port Company. And then Chris Lancaster, Supply Chain Development Manager for Foodstuffs South Island. So we've allocated some time to each speaker, and then we'll have a Q&A session around about 20 to 1, and then and we'll take it from there with a bit of a wrap up. So I'm going to hand it over to you now. Thanks, David.
Excellent. So hopefully everybody can hear me, and thank you for the opportunity to have a brief chat. I will share my screen. I've tried to put some slides together, but it is only about 7 minutes, so hopefully we can all cope with that. Let me just click the right buttons down here. Look, as has already gone through, the agenda here is a little bit of background, our response, some workforce issues, some of the cargo challenges we're facing, and then a few comments from myself on the wider supply chain. So a little bit of background. Company was formed in 2004 and commenced operations in 2008 after building the first dryer at Dunsandel. Now got facilities at Dunsandel where there's 3 dryers, a blending and canning line, liquid milk, AMF and lactoferrin. Pekino, there's 1 dryer, and Palmerston North, a research development centre, and in Mangere there's a 2nd blending and canning line. Mainly processed milk powder, liquid milk, infant formula and AMF. Somewhere around about 92–93% of that is all exported. We employ about 900 people, and we commissioned a rail siding in May 2021. So about 90% of our container movements now come from Midland or go direct to Littleton Port. From a COVID response perspective, CILT started off by basically just following the government levels, and we introduced all the things that a lot of people here would be pretty familiar with: work from home, specific intranet page with verified information. Some experts came on site and gave us some talks about, the various aspects of COVID. Limited travel between the sites. We reduced contractor visits, promoted good hygiene standards, as one would expect, with hand sanitising all around the place. We also commenced daily declaration completion, so everyone had to verify that they were healthy coming on site. increased our cleaning cycles, so we basically doubled those to make sure that the cycles were capturing everything where there was crossover of people. Limited people in communal spaces, so I took a lot of desks and chairs out of different meeting rooms and the CAF to reduce the number of people in those spaces. After Delta emerged, the management group coordinated the company-wide response. Mask wearing became mandatory. Vaccination passes became mandatory to come on site. All roles were categorised into red, orange and green, as in the traffic light system. So in the current setting, we're red, and so people who are red can go to work, but orange is required as to stay at home, and green definitely is working at home. And lastly, just very recently in February, we introduced our RA testing on a 54-hour cycle, but as of today, that has now changed to daily because the Canterbury cases have gone over 100 as of yesterday. From a workforce perspective, primary goal, of course, is the health, wellbeing and safety of the employees who have come to work due to us being an essential service with milk collection and milk processing. We utilise bubbles wherever possible. However, the makeup of a plant such as us is that it does become very challenging when there is a lot of crossover for specific things. Put in separate entry and exit doors, moved our shift times so that we managed to limit the overlaps and that the different shifts didn't cross over or walk down the same corridors as each other. It's very difficult to completely segregate operations in a site like ours because there are some activities that are site-wide. Some of the maintenance people and access to spare parts, for instance, has to cross the whole site. So there was definite transition zones that people had to go through, hand sanitizing, washing. We've also isolated the liquid plant specifically, though, because of the requirement for the liquid milk in the South Island. They have their own separate cafeteria, their own separate amenities, their own separate entrance, and they come in through a separate checkpoint at the gate through security. We've moved the majority of meetings to be online, minimise face-to-face, but the real workforce pressure now is on recruitment. Low unemployment and being 50 kilometres out of town is proving to be a challenge because of where we've got to, predominantly driven by, of course, the not able to get some of the seasonal workers in. So some of those options have been reduced, so then we're relying on a New Zealand-based workforce. From an import, export, domestic cargo movement, there'll be no surprises here. I'm sure nearly everybody will be talking along the same lines. Access to empty containers, that's a real challenge nationwide. Yard congestion due to ship arrival time changes. So that's when we've got the containers ready to go, but then the ship moves out a week. Then we've got to get more containers and then get them loaded to move them on a ship ahead of one that were already loaded. Even more so in that environment when we mix that with the train. The loss of overall capacity at Lyttelton with some reduced port calls means that we're consolidating more containers onto less ships, which again just exacerbates that yard congestion issue. Import order bunching is another one that we've hit, which is where import containers aren't all getting all the way to Christchurch or Lyttelton on the ship that they are shipped on. So they're sometimes left or unloaded in Australia, sometimes in Auckland, and sometimes have to come down by coastal shipping. And as a result, we're getting massive bunching, which means that you can't manage a workforce that can cater for double the imports coming in the same period of time. So that's proving to be a challenge. Export orders being consolidated onto one ship, as I mentioned before, just results in intense loading one day and then not much to do the next. The port reducing gate-in times, again, because the port gets congested, then that means that they've got to try and apply tighter timeframes for the containers to arrive and be moved off port. And for Sinlay, we're, as a result of that, having to truck more than we had planned due to these issues above. Having said all that, though, we are yet to really I guess, miss a shipment. The way that we're managing it is we've pulled a lot of orders as early in as we can in the effort to try and make sure we still meet our contractual agreements with customers and suppliers through to the end of the year. So at the moment, we're working on a very, very quiet July, knowing that ships will then roll into July by moving all the July orders back into April and May. From a wider supply chain, and just a little caveat, this is me talking, this is not a Synlait stance, but my view is that government must start to get more involved in pressuring shipping lines to be more responsive to the cost that they're imposing on the New Zealand supply chain, and particularly around imports for me. But obviously there's extra labour costs associated with the compressed windows at the ports. The repositioning of empty containers to places that they're needed is vital for the flow of exports. Great if berthing windows could be reintroduced. However, Ports of Auckland have very clearly made that that is not a priority for them, and we need them to be a leader in this, and Tauranga as well, to try and get some cleaner time frames so that we don't have ships coming around the top of the North Island and then suddenly deciding to go to Littleton first instead of Auckland. And potentially for me, and I've banged this drum for a while, the government could look, in my opinion, to lease a ship to provide a consistent Trans-Tasman service at rates that are not taking advantage of the current situation. I think we've all seen some of the rates that are being offered around the world, which are in many cases 300%, 400%, 500% higher than what they have been. So that's me. Thank you for listening, and I'll obviously be available for questions once the other speakers have spoken.
Excellent. Hey, thanks for that, David. Yeah, really informative insights there into what you're facing. A lot of them no different to ourselves, but some new different challenges as well. Just for those that have joined, may have come into the meeting just a little bit late, if you have any questions, please do send them through message to myself, and I can ask those on your behalf at the end of our presenters section. I'm going to hand you over to Bronwyn now. Bronwyn Woodham is the Health and Safety and Compliance Manager from CILT Logistics.
Thanks, Dan. I'll just share my screen with you. Can everyone see that?
Yep, all good.
Okay. So just give you a bit of a brief on our CILT Logistics here. We employ 200 people. We're based in Christchurch and Auckland. We're a 3PL operation. We have an air and ocean team based here in Christchurch, along with 5 warehouses and a transport team with their own trucks. In Auckland, we have 2 warehouses and a transport team, and we're just going to open our 3rd warehouse in May. So back the end of last year, I suppose like a lot of people, we did a risk assessment, and from that risk assessment, we want to know how we can mitigate COVID-19 within Sorted and our workforce. So we mandated our Class 5 truck drivers in November last year. Followed on by early January this year, we did another risk assessment on other roles within the business, and that followed by mandating all our staff, contractors and visitors to be fully vaccinated when on Sorted Logistics sites. From there, we updated our COVID-19 policy, and any new employees, we updated the position descriptions to reflect being fully mandated. We increased daily cleaning of our facilities in the warehouse and our equipment, so like our truck cabs, our MHE, our biosecurity equipment. We also updated our electronic induction tablet, including a health and safety COVID-19 statement, asking people had they been travelling or if they had any cold-like symptoms. We also included in our electronic tablet scanning of the QR code, and they also had to validate their vaccine passport. We have the compliance team here has introduced random checks on our vaccine passports by using the New Zealand Tracer app throughout our warehouse, especially for any temps or anyone we're not familiar with on site. We will actually go and random check just to ensure their vaccine passports are valid. I suppose like everyone else, we've had a few challenges with sourcing the correct information from Ministry of Health. So yeah, that's certainly one of our biggest challenges. And like most of you on this call, we are now a close contact exemption scheme. So so what are we expecting some of the impact on our cargo flow here at Sorted? One would be staff retention and the challenges we have out there. It certainly is an employees market. So how do we communicate this to our Sorted customers? Well, we're asking for some strategic ideas from our customers to relieve the pressure on the team in Auckland. And some of our customers now, we are actually sourcing their product from our Christchurch warehouses and forwarding them north to Auckland. We also have a live dashboard so our customers can see exactly what's going on, what orders have been picked and where we may be lagging a little bit. One of our challenges and impact on our cargo flow is the absenteeism of staff, which means, well, this is life for us now. Who knows what phase 3 of Omicron, that may change around isolation periods. How is Sort Logistics managing our workforce pressures? Well, we have re-evaluated our shift patterns. We did actually start off with 2 or 3 weeks ago having shifts working in bubbles. It was a real challenge for us. The labour resources were a challenge. We couldn't pick additional orders because there was no time in the day for overtime. We had shifts starting at 4:30 in the morning. So it was really, really difficult to catch up on orders. What's really, really important to us is our staff, and we spoke to our staff asking them for some suggestions and ideas, and one of them was a lot of people had commitments outside work, families, children, schools, and it was making life very difficult for them in the 2 split shifts. So we ended up having back to 1 shift, and so yeah, our people were important and we took on board what their concerns were. So we're obviously now with the shifts back to similar how they were, we do have split times around the break times to try and minimise any transmission if there is. What we have done with our customers and is keeping our Sort Logistics customers up to date on the percentage of our workforce operating, and they can see that through the live dashboards and the challenges we have on the day. Also, our sales team are actively on the phone to our customers, so not just by emails, but certainly that contact with our customers. And of course, we are implementing the RAT testing, so that's not going to eliminate COVID-19, but it's certainly going to help by obviously isolating for those 7 days and obviously minimising those that are close contacts who can come straight back to work. So our view on the wider challenges in the supply chain, big thing for us is our people. I've noticed out there the anxiety for some people, the stress, so very similar to how we dealt with the earthquake. You can see the stress and anxiety coming back through people. It's really, really important that we provide a safe workplace for our people and provide them with the correct PPE gear to do their job. Ideally, it'd be great to change the mindset of just-in-time freight to just-in-time freight. So customers would be ideally it'd be good to have customers hold more stock versus cost of not having stock on the shelves. So it's inevitable. The challenge with the shipping lines are late. It puts pressure on our business, our trucks, our warehouses, because as soon as the containers do arrive here in the peaks and troughs, we can have resource issues. It's challenging times, but at the end of the day, it is about our people and we want to be the employer's choice. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you Sort Logistics challenges along the COVID-19 journey.
Thanks, Bronwyn. That's really good. Great to hear what you're going through. It's no different to what we ourselves at Maxwell's are. And again, anyone that's just joined the presentation a little bit late, please do send any questions you may have through to myself via the messaging app, and we'll ask those at the end of the session. I'm going to hand you over to Simon Munt now. Simon, the floor is yours.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan, and thanks to Tom Burt also from LPC, who I know put in a lot of effort to get this forum together. You know, it's a great opportunity for the supply chain to get together and share those ideas and you know, hopefully learn a few things around what's happening out there to keep the supply chain moving. You know, look, from LPC's perspective, you know, we're obviously a critical lifeline asset, and I guess you know, we are key. Without Littleton sort of running relatively normal, then the supply chain does you know, does obviously grind to a halt. So we take that very seriously, and you know, we've been in I guess some form of lockdown bubble, different form of working since March 2020, and in some areas like pilots, who we have only 6 of and are pretty critical to getting vessels in. They have stayed virtually in the same format as they were in March 2020. So they've been in that way of working for 2 years. For the rest of our workforce, I guess we've learned and we've adjusted and we've modified the way we're responding. I guess in the first lockdown, it was a situation where we had probably about 30% drop off in volume. So we were able to get into separate bubbles. We were able to have pretty big gaps between our shifts, and we could drop our capacity ultimately to keep people safe, abide by the lockdown rules, but still keep the port going based on what the demand we had. You know, under the current environment, we don't have that luxury because the supply chain's running relatively as normal, volumes are running as normal. So, you know, as part of our business continuity, it's not just about making sure the business keeps going day in, day out, but we've got to deliver that capacity. So we have modified what we're doing in that space. So we have split into teams. We've split into the groups similar to what David and Bronwyn have talked about. But we've actually set up facilities. So very near the truck drivers or anyone coming to port, you'll see we actually have 2 smoker rooms now for our cargo handlers. One group, who are the predominant group that are working, can be in one smoker area. The other group that are perhaps here on overtime and perhaps giving us additional capacity to deal with additional vessels, additional volume, they can be in another room. So we're keeping those groups separate. So as I say, we can still deliver our capacity and keep freight moving. But if one of those groups are to get infected, we don't take out the whole business, so we can keep that level of continuity. The port is mandated for vaccinations. We've been in a situation that a lot of our workforce have been heavily vaccinated right from the outset, and the fact that we from March 2020 were mandated under the Border Force requirements, and that meant circa 60% of our workforce were mandated. We mandated our internal staff late last year, and then any visitors to port that became effective in January this year. That for our border workers and our staff, that's including the booster as well. You know, look, our focus is about it's about keeping the supply chain going, but it's got to be on people. I think that there's been real reference here to, you know, it is an employer's market. While the port generally has been pretty good, I know the depots have really struggled to get people, and you know, we're really focused on ensuring that any of our COVID rosters or anything we do in that space don't impact and don't add to the anxiety of the people that we've got, because the reality is people will just go and will take jobs and look at opportunities elsewhere. So making sure that our people are looked after means that our people are going to look after ultimately our customers and keep things going. You know, we see this as it's a really fluid and evolving issue. You know, I received a message from Maritime New Zealand at 7:30 on Friday night based on a decision they just made to stop Border Force testing at North Port and ports of Auckland because of the pressure on the testing system. You know, that type of thing is just going to continue to roll down the country as it evolves. So, you know, it's something that we are doing is just ensuring that we're really nimble and we're meeting daily with our teams to change and evolve our response to things as it goes. You know, look, a positive change was going from phase 1 to phase 2, which dropped down those isolation periods. So it means if people can get infected, we can get them rat tested, we can get them back to work, and we've set up rat testing on site, and just working in that phase now. So like everyone, it's a numbers game. If you lose big chunks of your workforce, then it's going to have a significant impact on the business. For us, we do and we do expect that we will get hit. I mean, if you look at Ports of Auckland now, I think about 20% of their workforce has been affected by COVID. So we're not naive to know that will come at some point. And we have to acknowledge that at some point we may have to reduce our service offering to 2 shifts a day as opposed to 3. But our focus will be on first and foremost maintaining as much operation as normal as possible to support the supply chain. At some point, if we got into that situation where that got really difficult to do, then we go to our lifeline assets, which is about fuel, is about food, and is about keeping keeping the supplies going to keep the city going. So, we hope we don't get to that level, but we've got plans to address that if that was to occur. Probably just touching on the wider supply chain issues, and I think David summed it up pretty well. We're getting vessel calls, and it's been consistent this way for the last 2 years. About 80 to 90% of planned vessel calls are actually coming. We're seeing a number of vessels that are calling that would normally call Auckland first and then come down here, who are actually coming in and calling Littleton as first port. That means that they don't take a lot of exports. They don't provide an Auckland-Littleton domestic service. So that's having havoc with services for people. Littleton, I think, is in a pretty good position though. I mean, we've got shippers from Nelson, from Invercargill, from Dunedin, all clambering to get to services in Littleton, because Littleton remains a lot better service than some of those other outports in the South Island. And I guess you will have seen last week Zin introduced a call into Littleton, which is great, and we have another shipping line that a decision is pending in the next little while. So I think being a shipper in this region, I think you're a lot more protected from some of the supply chain challenges that we're seeing elsewhere. Look, in terms of when do we see things going to normal, clearly we're going to have an upsurge in the next couple of months if you look at predictions around Omicron. But thinking more widely than that, we don't see any return to any form of normality this year in terms of those vessel calls, in terms of Auckland, which to David's point is a really key part of it. We don't see any change in that this side of this year. So I think we are going to continue to operate in what is this new norm. And I would have to say that it was chaos when this first hit in early in 2020, but as a supply chain, I think you've all been really resilient from where we see it in the port and adapt to the new norm. And what was fever pitch maybe 12 or 18 months ago seems to be that people have adjusted what they're doing, and I think that's certainly seen from where we sit in the supply chain. So look, that's what we're doing. As I say, I think that the key from our perspective is to be nimble. Things are going to continue to evolve and change. I suspect things will get worse than before they get better over the next sort of month or 6 weeks, and it's a case of all working together to make sure that we keep cargo in and out flowing. So that's what we're doing.
Excellent, thanks, Simon. Really good to hear from you. I mean, it's a key piece of infrastructure we all rely on, and it's good to know you guys are in as good a place as you can be. And you're right, we've got a couple of rough months ahead, but hopefully there will be some light at the end of the tunnel in the not too distant future. I'm going to hand you over to Chris Lancaster, Supply Chain Development Manager for Foodstuff South Island. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Dan. Afternoon, everyone. Lucky last. So, interesting, very common themes, actually. You've answered, or you've told half my story, you three, but, Littleton is obviously a gateway for a lot of our import, sorted supply product to us on behalf of a lot of our vendors and suppliers, and Synlait provide all our milk. So there is actually quite a tie-up here with each of these 4 businesses in some form or fashion interacting together. I've got a couple of quick slides here that I'll give you an update on our Foodstuffs South Island current situation. So you can see that all right, Dan? Good. So look, just on where we're at in the sense of our response, being in the FMCG business, we have seen a bit of a roller coaster ride over the last couple of years. So really what I'm going to do is just give you a quick touch and flavour on the impact, our response around resourcing, response around managing volumes, and where we see the future taking us. So to recap, we've got 3 distribution centres, 2 in Christchurch, ambient temperature controlled, and 1 in Dunedin, servicing around 226 retail stores across 6 brand formats. So we have quite a large scope of business that we service, that obviously get impacted by events and the likes of pandemics and COVID all quite differently. So our tap has to vary. We're probably dispatching, well, not probably, we are dispatching around 24,000 pallets a week over a 7-day period to our retail sites, which is about 1.3 million cases. So that's the sort of volume going through those 3 sites. So just on COVID impact, I could make a list here of probably 50 bullet points, but the key call-outs are that naturally we saw increased demand following the alert level and traffic light announcements. The graph down the bottom, very small, but it just shows you some of those peaks and troughs that we saw throughout this year and last year when we had changing circumstances. And we're talking short, sharp, 40–50% increases on demand. Obviously, our trade and the demand, we had big fluctuations. So not only do you get the big peaks, we then had big lows sometimes directly after that. Consumer habits changing with increased focus and demand on certain categories. An example of that at the moment is more frozens, shelf stable, probably less around perishables. So these are, I think, consumer habits, targeting certain categories and stocking the pantry up. Impact on supplier service levels. I mean, that's been a talk for the last couple of years. So that flows back into our business and we then have to respond accordingly. So look, it has been disruptive, probably 2 years into it now. So yeah, getting some good tools to combat that, but constantly always monitoring the situation and trying to adapt to the change. So just staff and labour, very common theme here is talked from the other 3. Current labour market is very presenting challenges, is very challenging. It hasn't just been like that for the last few months, probably been like that for the last couple of years. Also, we've put a lot of COVID response initiatives into our sites, right through from our DCs, transport, support office, and operating in bubbles, shift segregation, and even our other COVID response processes are impacting our productivity and output. Quite simply, and I think Maureen Bromman touched on it before, the loss of overtime, it does hurt in the tight labour market. So, we are where we're at. We're doing the segregation and keeping people safe for the right reasons. And then what we've had to do is some of those approach items that I've listed there, which is increasing our recruitment focus and running recruitment day sessions, increased use of part-time student and temporary labour. So we're looking at a number of approaches here that will certainly lift our resourcing levels. Introduction of incentives and acknowledgement of our teams. That might be providing food bags, retention initiatives. Looking at some more family-friendly shifts. As the labour market has got tight, obviously we need to sort of offer opportunities for staff that gets them into our sites. And also recent deployment of non-internal, non-DC staff to assist our operations. So we've had a good uptake from our support office of about 70 heads that are making themselves available to operationally help out as required. Just on demand, so you talk a bit about obviously that was our staffing and throwing resource at it and a few different tactics. So then we try and manage demand, so it's a sort of a 2-pronged approach. Look, there's a big list of things here that are going on, and these are just probably some of the key highlights or summaries. Enhancement of our store ordering process to align output with our resourcing levels. So normally we let demand flow into our business. We're taking a bit more control of that, particularly around at the moment our Hornby ambient DC, and we'll push that through our other sites as required. And that is really saying we got good staffing levels this day, and this is what we want to almost push out to our retail stores. So we've just changed a bit of tack there, and it has been working relatively well for us. We're looking at a lot of order optimization and efficiency tools using our SAP systems, and also that's flowing on to changes of ordering patterns and cycles to try and just get efficiency and optimization out of our ordering. We've moved to some direct-to-store deliveries, so that's where it's made sense through our suppliers with their 3PL saying, well, let's just push that direct to our stores, predominantly Pack and Save Group. And doing big increased forecast focus on our forecast visibility and planning. So that is key. It's not about what we're doing this afternoon or almost tomorrow. We are working on what's happening next week. And that then flows on to prioritisation of key products in our business and saying, you know, what's less important, put our energy into those key SKUs to get product onto shelf, because at the end of the day, that's what we're that's what we're here for. Just last thing to wrap up, you know, what are our future challenges and opportunities? I mean, I look at this and there's a significant amount of challenges and opportunities ahead, but some of the key ones is our top priority is to look after our people, as there's no two bones about it. That's been a common theme over the last 3 talks as well. So we need our people to, you know, supply product to our retailers, and there's a key focus and dedicated resource around there. We need to look at increased comms to our people, retailers, and our suppliers. Communication is key, but we're really ramping that up. Forecasting visibility and continuing to get greater visibility around that, and helping with our planning. If we can front foot it, do more proactive than reactive, that will certainly help. We're refining the way we operate, and we talk about network changes and disruptions. The lead times have been impacted domestically, internationally, and we are holding higher inventory levels to respond to that. It's one of many examples. I think in closing, you know, a key focus for us is we've got to keep the volume flowing at manageable levels so that and be prepared to sort of make changes at short notice, and particularly as we will start seeing some and more absenteeism come into our sites. There's some further tools there that we will, I suppose, flick the switch and really continue to keep priority product flowing to our retail sites. So, look, quite a lot to cover off there, but that's probably the key highlights. I think also shout out goes out to all of our teams. Massive efforts going in, particularly from our DC operational and transport teams, working some pretty solid hours under some pretty trying circumstances. So I think, you know, there's a big acknowledgement that they're the team at the coalface that's making all this happen. Some of the stuff I've touched on, I suppose, is the more proactive planning work that we're working on to support the operations. So, yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Really good insight into what's happening in your business. It's something we all rely on one way or another to get groceries weekly. Look, thanks to our 4 panellists again, and as Simon said, thanks to Tom Burt for organising that, and to Isabella from Sorted for her assistance as well. But a couple of key points that I've taken from our 4 speakers today. It's obviously everyone's doing the best that they can, taking all practical steps to look after, first of all, their staff, which is paramount. We all need to look after our employees. That's every day, not just during COVID, obviously, but really looking after our teams. It doesn't sound like anyone could be doing anything more than they are really in terms of trying to mitigate the risk in their business from what tools we've got at the moment. So you're good to see a real focus on people, and a key thing also, I think everyone's touched on it, is just communicating with not just staff obviously, but with our customers. Obviously some need to have their obviously expectations need to change during these times with staff shortages, delays and the likes. So your communication's paramount, especially for those who have staff working at home. I think we've all probably fallen into that trap. It's easy to leave them at arm's length sometime and not touch base with them. So I'd recommend reach out to those that are working at home and have a face-to-face if you're not already. Yeah, look, things are moving really quickly in the space. As David said, going to daily testing, I think it was as of 100 cases yesterday. We've got a couple of questions that have come through the group, and one is really for all 4, or if anyone wants to jump in and answer this one. So we're heading into what's traditionally, for many, a bit of a quieter time coming into autumn or winter. So how will any backlog of volumes that if we're going to see big absenteeisms and just the ability not to process work, how will that impact when the incoming seasonal volumes for inbound freight, for example, hits later this year. Anyone want to jump in and answer that one?
There you go, Dave.
Thanks for that, Chris. Look, it's an interesting one because we're right in the middle of our peak exports from a Synlait perspective. So yeah, this isn't a downtime for me. My time slows down sort of maybe this year July, but traditionally August, September, October are the slower export months for us. So yeah, I'm scrambling every day, replanning and trying to find people to do the task. We've started, I didn't mention it in my speech, but we've started looking at whether or not there's any internal people that we can have within our office area to come down and help out to try and supplement those resources. And we're also looking at moving stuff north and south now that we've got daily rat testing in place. But bringing people from the North Island warehouses down when there's maybe a maintenance 4 or 5 days at the plant. So yeah, no, we're busier than ever.
Yeah,
I
think from a port perspective, yeah, we're a little bit the same. We don't, I guess we don't tend to have the same degree of seasonality we used to have. We are heading very much into our export season, and I think something that we've seen through COVID is while you see the peaks day to day, week to week on the various vessels, we've actually seen our volume flatten quite a bit, and that's because imports just move all year round in a lot of ways because people can't rely on getting them in that November period. So we have seen certainly flatter supply there, and then at the shoulders of our export season, so July, August, what we're seeing is because the exporters haven't been able to get their product away in the normal sort of export peak period, it's pushed out into the shoulders. So our demand is actually quite flat across the business.
Yeah, look, from Foodstuff's perspective, I mean, our peaks are Christmas, but also another big one coming in is Easter. Easter might be different this year depending on what travel's happening out there and how consumers spend, and that it's a bit of the unknown for us. But look, our focus is, we're under certainly, we've no doubt about it, we're all under pressure. So we just got to keep on top of that as much as we can and refine. And as I said, throwing resources is one thing, and then looking at our order management flow and optimization. One thing we did a couple of years ago, well, first lockdown, is we shut out a lot of product for supply for a period of time. It was a quick win, but it was painful to get back on top of it because we had to sort of do the pipeline fill all over again. This time around and other times, we're now sort of, as I say, trying to just have managed flows of product going through. So when we do get further spikes in that, we're in a better sort of position. But look, I suppose this time round, it's just about round 4 now of major disruption. We've just got a few more tools that, as I said, try to keep it more manageable. But look, big focus heading into Easter for us, and we need to be talking about and planning for that now. So,
just following on
yeah.
Just following on there from you, Chris. Last year, our peak started about September last year. Which is quite early for us. I think this year there are going to be the peaks and troughs and plateau out, and I think this is our business as usual, at least for the next 12 to 18 months.
Yep,
totally. Thanks, Bronwyn. Thanks, everyone. Next question, well, last question, I've only got a couple, is around automation, and obviously it's a very tight labour market. There's no one out there really. So what part does automation play in your business now or in the future? Is it a focus, given that there is a labour shortage and it's not going to fix itself overnight? Mindful that automation may not necessarily be cheap or a quick fix either.
I'll go first if you like, Dan. Look, to be honest, at the moment
Thanks,
we are, we range 20,000 SKUs of product. We are a discrete manual pack operation with selective pallet racking. That is the sort of model that we run over our 3 sites. But look, quite timely, because we've all known with the pressures on labour and the costs of labour, we need to continue to be more efficient, be smarter. We are actually working with an external company at the moment and have undertaken a bit of in the midst of looking and planning for our future. So there's a lot more water to go under the bridge. I don't know the outcome of that yet, but we certainly know due to growth pressures that there will be opportunities there, and we plan to probably have a clearer picture sort of second quarter of this year. But if that means building some more sheds and building more capacity, which we will need to do, that won't happen overnight. So long term, this sort of adds certainly fuel to the fire to say, have a good hard look at it. But short term, we've got to focus on our labour and our sort of processes that we know today, because it won't be a quick fix or a quick change, but certainly a focus for us.
I'm happy to go. I've probably got to be a bit careful what I talk about being a port and automation at the moment, because it's a bit of a dirty word around the place. Yeah, look, I mean, in time, absolutely automation. You just look what the trends are globally. So absolutely more automation, more technology is going to play its part. It's certainly not on the horizon anytime soon, but yeah, it's certainly there. I think for us, there is a lot of talk around in the supply chain, and the Ministry of Transport is driving a lot around interfaces and technology to make the whole supply chain work more smoothly. And while we don't disagree with that, I think we've got to be really careful that that's not the silver bullet to the current issues that we've got in New Zealand. I mean, COVID's a contributor, but fundamentally, if you look at the transport network and if you look at the port network, it's underinvestment in the fact that we just don't have enough capacity. So over the coming years, the solution's got to be more investment. You just look at the challenges that Auckland have got. That's been driven by lack of investment and ability to grow. You look at Tauranga, can't get consents to grow. Look, we've got the challenges around the capital and the investment required to grow. So as a country, I think we do have to find a way to invest in infrastructure.
Yeah, and looking from my perspective, we've looked at automation with the big dairy pallets and loading of containers. But the reality is that you've got to have something pretty substantial that's actually driving your business. If there's one area that Synlait hasn't been a bit of a maverick and a bit of a leader on, it's actually investment in an ERP system. So that is happening right now and has been happening, and we're going down the same line as foodstuffs with SAP. But that's going to have to happen first before we then launch into some automation, automated guided vehicles, putting pallets away, 24/7. That stuff requires a fairly decent amount of ERP grunt, and so we're stuck in that limbo phase at the moment before we take that next step.
Well, here at Sorted, we're always exploring new projects and looking into the future and what's around the corner. One of our opportunities we're looking at is drones in the warehouse. Our IT team here is growing significantly, so there is a lot of projects and technology on the go. But at the end of the day, it's not going to replace people.
Thanks, Bronwyn. I've just had one more question come in, and someone wants to know more about what it looks like moving away from just in time to just in case. And that's an interesting question. I mean, for us as a 3PL operator, we are servicing DCs as well as direct to customer and direct to store. So we know retail stores are not always built to have great big storerooms, and the last leg of the journey is sometimes the hardest. But I'll open up to the panel. What does it look like for us? It looks like more storage. Our clients have to get inventory levels. But in terms of the whole picture, does someone want to jump in and say what that looks like from their perspective, please?
Well, Sort Logistics, we're peering for that, you could say. We've got another 2 warehouses on the go. And ideally, we want to see more product in the warehouse. So therefore, there's not so many empty shelves out there in our customers' places.
Yeah, from foodstuffs, as I probably mentioned, we got a huge focus around forecasting and what not about today or even next week, because that's upon us now, but what the future is holding. So working closely with our procurement team and really trying to model up, you know, what change of tack are they going to be putting in play, and how do we react? You know, ironically, we build stock up. Supplier levels are probably at an all-time low. The service levels come out of suppliers, so there's a bit of an offset. You know, we've got less inventory of certain SKUs, but more of others, and the net position sometimes balances itself out. Plus, when you then get COVID lockdowns or Omicron announcements, you get a surge of consumption, and that also, you know, will reduce your inventory. So it's a bit of a roller coaster, to be fair. And but we are focused on, you know, building stock sensibly, not going too crazy, but steady as she goes, and you know, making sure we can sort of, I suppose, yeah, have some stock build strategies to help us, you know, heading into the next quarter anyway.
Yeah, from a port perspective, I guess the just-in-time doesn't impact us too much directly. I think that the key for us is we want to do the same amount of volume day in, week out, month out. We need to be moving to a system that runs 24/7. We need trucking, we need warehousing to be open 24/7, so we can flatten the curve and use our capacity in all our facilities as best we can. And I guess what we do know in the discussion we've had with the industry, one of the big challenges to do that is one of the key themes that we've had here today, which is people. But you know, that is going to be the challenge. You know, that infrastructure challenge is, you know, we've got to use what we've got as efficiently as possible. So the more we can flatten the curve, the better.
Yeah, and I think from our perspective as well, we you know, we import a significant quantity of product from overseas every year to as in additives into the products that we make, and we are definitely looking at holding higher inventory levels for those. You know, it's a real catch-22. You know, you don't want high inventory levels because you damage working capital, but you've got to hold high inventory levels so you can keep everybody working and keep the shifts operating. So it's a real balancing act that we're working through at the moment, particularly with imports. But we also have some things like our infant formula cans, predominantly made in Hornby, and they come out and they're on about you know, only 4 or 5 days in advance. So that's a different kettle of fish, again, to try and manage, where we have to try and maintain that just in time. But the fundamental raw material, the tin plate, is imported. So, you know, everywhere you look, you've got another level of inventory that's being held in the chain. And as a result, I would hazard a guess, if you did a worldwide study, you would find that inventory holdings worldwide have gone up significantly to this just-in-case scenario.
And as Simon said earlier, David, it's not going to change this year, so that gives you some forecasting certainty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's also probably worth noting, you know, we talk about our experiences and what we're doing today and what we've done in previous responses, but trying to keep in place certain behaviours moving forward. And I think there's some we've initiated in the last 3 weeks. I'm resided to the fact, if we can get agreement from our retail operations teams, that we will want to keep those sorts of purchasing behaviours in play. So if there's any positives to come out of this frustrating time, it's about how do you take the wins that you've implemented, but, you know, bring them back into BAU life and try and be more efficient. You know, we obviously servicing our still 7 days a week, and probably, to be honest, over-service them. You know, we're giving all things to all people. Trying times, you tighten the screws a bit, turn the dial, and I think, you know, we'll be looking at trying to hold on to some of those wins long term and bank that. And so, you know, certainly suggest, you know, having a focus in that area, because now's the time to hang on to it.
I think that's a really good point, Chris. I mean, if I look at you know, the Christchurch earthquakes, we look at the Kaikoura earthquakes, I think the supply chain adjusted for as long as it needed to adjust, and then went back to how it operated before that. I think the fact that COVID has gone on for so long and been so disruptive, there seems to be a general acceptance and understanding of issues, even with government, with Ministry of Transport, etc. I think people are understanding the value of a supply chain and understanding the challenges. So completely agree. We've got to make sure we don't go back to where we were. So I think that's a really good observation.
Thank you. There's no further questions have come through from the chat, so that's all I've got today, unless anyone has anything else, I can throw the floor open if anyone wants to add any comments. But once again, thank you to our 4 presenters for your time today during the middle of a busy day. And thanks to all those that have attended this afternoon. I hope you've taken away something from today's seminar. It's been, yeah, really good.
That's good. Thanks, Dan and Tom, for yeah, arranging. And I think, yeah, as I said, good to do over lunchtime. It's not hard to check in for an hour, and so no, appreciate it. Good effort.
And we may look to do this again. We'll look for feedback from our members, and if it's yeah, we'll get this up and running again in another month or 6 weeks.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you.